Today's episode is brought to you by Cooney. If you're chasing the perfect pour, you already know kettle matters. The Cooney gooseneck gives you a precise temperature control and steady smooth pour that turns a good cup into a great one. Whether you're brewing a bright Ethiopian or a chocolatey dark roast, it's built solid, looks beautiful on your counter, and honestly, it makes the brewing feel a little more intentional. Grab yours through the link in the show description and save 10% off. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Roast podcast, where we dive into the world of coffee roasting with Cooney from Chatty Wren Coffee Roasters. Joining us as we explore the journey from small batch roasting to becoming a community coffee success. Whether you're a coffee enthusiast or an inspiring roaster, this episode is packed with insights on sourcing, roasting techniques, and marketing challenge. Let's get started. Cooney, welcome to the podcast, and how are you today?
Hey, thanks for having me. Doing well.
Can you give us, our audience, what do you do and what kind of business do you operate?
So I roast coffee. We own Chatty Wren Coffee Roasters. We've been in business for about 5 years. Small batch. Right now I do anywhere from 200 to 300 pounds a week, which seems like a lot for an 8-pound roaster, but we're still a small batch artisanal roaster in Cobblestone, New York.
So what made you get started into the roasting business?
It's funny you should ask. So my wife and I had gone on a trip to Costa Rica, which has amazing coffee, by the way, and packed our backpacks full of coffee, came home, and when we ran out of said coffee for Father's Day, my wife Georgette got me 2 pounds of green Costa Rican coffee beans, it's called a Nuvo clay coffee roasting pot, and a coffee shrub, and was like, Happy Father's Day. I didn't know the first thing about it. It was a lot of YouTube videos and time over my grill, learning how to roast. And it just was something that was intriguing, and it was a lot of fun. I mean, you need more than just add heat to have good coffee. There's a little bit of science behind it. So we upgraded to a 1 kilogram home roaster, and since then have upgraded to what I have now, which is a 8-pound roaster from Buckeye Coffee Roasters.
That's awesome. It's funny because I was looking into buying a roaster and doing it myself and learning the whole process. Maybe you can give me some insight on what do you need to do, how to get started. It's a lot, and I'm trying to figure it out myself because I want to do some home roasting myself and start off, roasting my own roasting business.
Well, from the business side of things, I can tell you we did everything wrong. So it's been definitely a baptism by fire and a learning process. My wife and I both had full-time careers outside of roasting. So I didn't start off with a business plan. I didn't really know anything about the business world when we started. But what I did know was that I had a lot of fun roasting. I'd say as far as starting out for a home roaster, the world is wide open. I mean, you can roast coffee in a cast iron skillet. They have popcorn makers that roast fantastic coffee. Sweet Maria's out of California, they offer exceptional beans, and they have all kinds of home roasting. They sell roasters, there's several different varieties of home roasters, and they really get into the weeds of it as far as the home roasting and the different variances that you can do while you're roasting to, try and pull out different flavors. If you have a fruity coffee or whatever, what you can do to kind of really showcase that particular bean. Once you graduate from there into a business, everything changes. You can still thoroughly enjoy what you do. You can still really love roasting coffee, but there's a lot of things to consider. Like our business model, for example, I do all single origin. I don't do any blends. That becomes problematic if you have somebody who has a coffee shop that wants their own certain flavor of coffee, right? They want a certain blend to have their own unique identity. Not really, that's not something that we offer. There's just a lot of things to consider. The overhead that it's going to cost you, where you're going to be doing this as far as the certifications that you're going to need, and then developing a customer base.
How does that work with getting the permits and stuff like that and being like an LLC when it comes to roasting, like starting your own roasting business?
It was actually fairly straightforward. So the getting certified, we're certified through Ag and Market. So they basically will give you a checklist of what you need, and then they'll come inspect your facility. And it's an annual inspection and an annual application that you fill out. As far as the LLC, it was a lot of online research, and we did all of it ourselves. So, like I say, it was fairly straightforward. You just have to do the legwork and make sure that you're doing it correctly.
What locations are you currently right now where people can just buy your particular beans?
So we have a pretty solid presence in Schoharie and Otsego counties. In Schoharie, we're in Bells and Whistles Nutrition. We're in Grapevine Farms. We're in the Carrot Barn in Schoharie. And then just down the road from them in the Artisans Market right on Main Street in Schoharie. In Cooperstown, I'm at the Farmers Market pretty much every Saturday. The local bird shop brews and carries our coffee. Cooperstown Natural Foods carries our bagged coffee, and then Origins Cafe brews and also sells retail. And then we have an online presence as well.
Even hard scrabble too.
Yes, thank you. Hard Scrabble. I always forget to mention she doesn't do retail bags, but she makes a really mean cup of coffee with our Honduras. That's primarily what she uses is our Honduras dark roast.
Yeah, I went there last year. They had the Capital City Rescue Mission, and I went to see Hard Scrabble, and then I tried the coffee out, and I was like, "Wow, this is really good." And she says, "Yeah, I get it from Chatty Ren." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Then down the road, I went to the barn over there, and then I seen all of your bags of beans there, and I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." And I was looking at all the different like stuff you got there. Like, how many roasts do you like, or origins do you do particular?
It really depends on what they have available. Last year was definitely challenging when it came to purchasing coffee, just with everything going on. So Brazil sets the market for the world, basically on coffee, right? So depending on what's going on in Brazil, last year there was some drought issues right before the flowering, so people anticipated a shortage. So those that could would make large purchases with a big swoop, which kind of left smaller roasters such as myself kind of fending for what's left. As far as the different origins, I've had up to 12 different origins at one time. Right now, I want to say I have 9, and that's including my decaf. So it's really just what's available. I look and see what's coming in. We really try and follow the fresh crops as they come in. So I have my eye on a few that are afloat. As soon as they come in, I'll buy a couple bags, and it's seasonal. It rotates. Like I'm waiting on some Ethiopia, but it's not going to hit until mid to late summer.
I know like a lot of like the coffee has gone up because of the tariffs that Trump put in place. Has that affected you in any way in your costs?
No, not so much. I would say, I mean, there was a brief period where tariffs, I wouldn't say were an issue, but they were part of it. They were just part of the cost. But more so, I would say Brazil and then the feeding frenzy, like I say, with the market. So it's certainly market driven, not even counting tariffs, just with everything else that was going on. My beans jumped almost $2 a pound on me in less than 6 months. And that's fairly significant when it's a 150-pound bag of beans, and you want to buy multiple bags. So that was difficult because you can't really, I guess I could have, but I found it hard to transition that immediately to the customer. You know what I mean? So I tried to kind of hold out as long as I could before I ended up raising my prices, just because I don't feel like you can constantly be changing your prices to match the volatility of the market.
Do you see anything like, do you see in any way that cost is going to cut down a little bit, or is it still going to be steadily the way it is?
No, it's actually starting to go back down now. It's nowhere near what it was 2 years ago, but it's certainly, a lot of the beans that I'm seeing are about $1 less a pound than they were last year. So it's gradual. It's starting to go down. Going back to not really understanding business before we jumped into this, or the way the whole machine works when ordering coffee. Like I say, it's definitely market driven. So my cost on Monday could go up 30 cents by Thursday. So you actually have to kind of pay attention to what the prices are, and if you can afford it, be selective on when you buy it. Sometimes get a little bit of a better deal that way.
It's like a stock market. It's like
It really
you
is.
gotta buy
Yeah,
you gotta buy it low before it jumps up. Yeah.
100%.
All right. Now I got a better
Yeah.
understanding on like how that aspect works. No, that's it's a tactic, and you have to constantly monitor what the demand is and what the pricing is, and it's like pretty much like the stock market. And it's kind of at one point it's kind of like a little bit stressful. Like, should I eat the cost, or should I keep my prices the same, or should I adjust, or like how am I going to do this, or should I buy quantities, a lot of it, and see if I'm able to sell it at a decent price?
Yeah, the thing to consider with that though is one, if you're buying a lot of it, you figure just a breakdown. So if I order a full pellet, that's 10 bags of coffee, right? And that's the best you're going to get as far as shipping, right? Is to get a full pallet, because freight is freight for your pallet. Whether you have one bag on there or 10 bags, it's going to be the same cost for your freight. But when you're talking, a lot of companies will get 2 or 3 pallets. That's $20,000 worth of coffee. So one, there's that upfront cost initially to purchase it, but then you really need to have a place to store it too, because you can't just throw it out in the shed. You have to have a temperature and humidity controlled environment for your coffee. Otherwise, you could end up with issues, like mold, or it can become stale. You don't want huge fluctuations, in your temperature, which also is challenging, during the winter. So depending on where you have to store it. So it all depends on your facility and what you're set up and your ability to take care of the product.
Yeah, definitely. I heard about the whole thing about mold in coffee and stuff like that, which is like bizarre, but who knew? I wouldn't even known that, you know. I always like getting like freshly roasted beans and then just grinding it up and just making it at home, especially doing like a lot of pour overs. Are you more towards like if you used to drink coffee in a daily basis, do you like doing like the fruitier notes type for your coffee, like fruity and floral?
So I definitely have a soft spot for the naturals, the fruitier coffees. I absolutely love them. I wouldn't say they're my daily go-to. To me, it's kind of like a treat. I'll have them once in a while. We sell them like crazy, obviously, but for my Monday through Friday, my go-to is usually the Central American and sometimes naturals, but a lot of times just a wash coffee. So something that's middle of the road, got a little bit of chocolatey note. I like them if they have a little bit of a stone fruit note, like the Royal Reserva that we had last year was very fruit forward. A lot of my Ethiopias are very fruit forward. It's fantastic. Excellent as a pour over, even better in my mind as a French press. But again, that's not something that I usually have every day.
Yeah. When you doing your roast and stuff like that, you do like cupping and trying to figure out what notes you could put on your baggage, on your like bags and stuff like that. Try to see like what you get.
So I'm a little spoiled. We go through Royal New York and they do a fantastic job with the beans because they'll do pre-shipment cupping notes. And then as soon as it hits the port, they'll do a cupping. Like they have this giant, office set up. It's kind of cool to look at. And they have just a ton of cups sitting around it, and the whole crew will come in and they'll do all the cuppings for every lot that comes in. So when they put the notes on the bag, I pretty much stay with those notes. I'm not gonna change them. If they're saying, if I see something that says honey and tangerine and milk chocolate or whatever, I know that it's gonna have a little bit of a citrus note. It's gonna be, it's gonna have some sweetness that I can pull out of it and be a relatively smooth cup of coffee. If I see something, like grapefruit, lime, that kind of stuff, I usually like the Kenyas. Some of those I tend to stay away from because the acidity is going to be very high in them. It's going to be a very bright cup of coffee. There's certainly people that really appreciate that cup of coffee. To me, it lights me up like a Christmas tree. And if I don't love it, it's kind of hard to sell it. If that makes sense, you know what I mean? I kind of stay away from those.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of specialty coffee lately and getting the fruity notes, and I just love the taste of it. Like the Ethiopian natural, that's like phenomenal. And then I've been trying like all different types of regions, and I've just been traveling around from like area to area just to get those like tastings. 'Cause when I first started into this whole coffee thing, I didn't understand what notes were and what the understand like the taste was for especially for something fruity or floral. As I got more evolve in my taste palette and trying different things, I'm like, wow, this is really good. I don't need to have milk or cream or anything like that. I could just drink it
Exactly.
straight the way it
Yep.
is, you know. And like for espresso, I've been doing like flat whites or cortado or ristretto or piccolo. You know, those type of different things that I've been doing with my machine. I've been trying it and it's like, wow, this is amazing.
I'm going to tell you that, and this is going to sound silly for a guy that's kind of into coffee, but I don't know what half of those things are that you just labeled off.
You know, I learned all that stuff through the interwebs, like everything from there, going to specialty like coffee shops and doing like special tastings. I even got a tour, Brutus Roasting, and he showed me the
Yeah.
whole roasting process. And it was pretty cool seeing Steven doing that and showing me like how the processes of roasting and like the different phases and the cracks, and then smelling like the first phase of like initially like a light color, like a cinnamon. And it's
Yeah.
like, wow, this
It's
is
amazing,
amazing.
right? Does it smell like a cinnamon bun?
Yeah, it does smell
Yeah.
like a cinnamon bun, and I'm like, "Wow." I was like, "I can't believe it." And that's what really got me more into say, "Hey, I wanna roast coffee. I wanna be a micro roaster. I wanna sell a little small bag." I'm not gonna be like a crazy person where I'm gonna be, like, out there selling them like crazy. Just for people who are just interested or curious and just making specialty coffee, and I have some at my house, and buying specific regions and specific origin coffee and just roasting it and just trying it out at home and, hey, have everybody, "Hey, try this out," or sell it.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun, and it's kind of like wine, right? Because your weather, your crop conditions, you could have, an Ethiopia Kimbata. Like I had one year, and it was literally like drinking blueberry juice. Now, blueberry is a very coveted coffee note for the. So when you see, a cupping note that says blueberry, it's definitely going to have a blueberry note to it. And this, it smelled like blueberry. It tasted like it, just an amazing coffee. So I was so excited when they had it come out the following year. I bought 3 bags of it. It tasted nothing like blueberry. It was like raspberry and strawberry or something like that, something completely different. It was still delicious, but it's kind of cool because the crops or conditions, they change the flavor of your coffee year by year by year, right? So you're never going to have the same thing twice, basically. And for us, that's kind of what's exciting about it. It's cool to see the new stuff come in and get excited to see what I can potentially do with a bean, and what kind of flavors we can pull out of it. And it's sad when you see your favorite leave, but then you get excited again to what's the fresh one coming in.
Yeah, and this thing is too is like, you have different elevations, different minerals, soil. It depends on what the season is, and that's how it makes the difference between what coffee is coming in, the notes and everything else, which is like amazing. I like even like when I went to Hawaii, I got Kona coffee,
Hmm.
and like it's in volcanic soil, and I'm like, wow, this tastes really good, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it's awesome. Well, that's a lot of your, Costa Rica and stuff like that. It's also volcanic soil, so yeah, it's just amazing how the different conditions can change the flavor and also the
Yeah.
process, right? I didn't know, until we visited. So before we started the company, we'd gone to Akier's Coffee and Community in Turrialba, Costa Rica. They're really cool because they're the largest contingent farm altogether in the country. So we got to see everything from start to finish, like how it's grown, where it's grown. They explained the harvesting process and then also the finishing process. So, the difference between washed, a honey process of, a natural and all that. And it was really intriguing to see just the amount of effort and labor that goes into an exceptional cup of coffee, just from the growers.
Yeah, I actually like bought a book, coffee in general, like the different types of like process, the wash and everything on the beans, where it first originated, the origin, and then it has like all different types of recipes and where those recipes come from, or like those like specific things like a cortado or like a latte, like what who started all that and like the different processes. And just reading the book was like, wow, I was like, you learned a lot just for understanding like everything in just coffee in general. And I love like understanding the whole process of what coffee's all about and like the different processes and the different tastes. And that's why it's been such a popular thing, especially in the US, where a lot of people are going to more of the specialty coffees, doing all these competitions for like latte art or different recipes using different like an AeroPress or pour over. Like they have these different brew
Right.
ratios, temperatures, and like how these things affect the taste and like how much time it takes to brew. So you got to make sure you get the perfect timing. Same thing we do in a shot espresso. You know, you want 18
Yeah.
grams in, and then you want 36 out. You know.
Well, I would agree with you, especially with the espresso part, because you can botch up a shot pretty quickly. If you don't have your right extraction rate. As far as the other stuff, I always get a kick out of folks will come up to me in the market and they'll be like, you have to brew coffee at this temperature and a techniform, and they label it out on all these things that they've read or whatever that are so strict in what you have to do to get the perfect cup of coffee. And I always kind of chuckle to myself because honestly, the best cup of coffee I've ever had in my life was ground by hand, and it was basically a pour over, but it looked, I call it dirty sock coffee because it looks like a cloth sock basically on a wooden stand in Costa Rica where it's essentially a pour over and then they brew it into your cup. It was amazing.
That is definitely amazing because I'm going to Puerto Rico and my stepbrother's mother does coffee like that, and that's the
Mhm.
best brewed coffee I have ever had. And I can't wait to go and see her do that because I never knew how she did it, and she's going to show me how to do it. I'm going to record bit by bit because that's like the best tasty coffee you can ever have.
Yeah, you'll have fun with that. You also, I'm sure you'll get to know a mocha pot very well in Puerto Rico. I feel like everywhere we went, everybody has a mocha pot.
I wanted to get a mocha pot, but then again, it's like, do I really need it? I have all these great
Right. No,
contraptions.
it's just another thing, right?
Yeah, it's another thing just to have. Same thing with like a
Yeah.
French press. The only thing I would do with a French press is use it more for brewing tea and then doing like different fruits and stuff like that and chopping it up
Yeah.
and just making it like a tea thing. But like a mocha pot, yeah, it's all right. But
Yeah. I mean, if you
I'm
had a good espresso machine, it's the same thing, but there's still, it's kind of cool. Like when we went to Puerto Rico, like every place that we stayed, that was how you had your coffee in the morning, right? So it was kind of cool. I don't know that I'd want one like that every day, but when in Rome, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. I love the coffee setup that I had. I started off with a basic espresso machine, a cheaper one, and then I says, you know what? I've been doing a lot of coffee content and highlighting a lot of different roasters and stuff like that. Let me just get an actual better espresso machine because I want to get because the one that I had, I can never dial in properly. And it just never works. It's just like a
Right.
hit or miss. I get this machine over here behind me. this thing is always making perfect shots. I got it dialed in. I got the right like setting for grinding, and it
Mhm.
just comes out perfect every time. And just getting that crema and making sure that I can do the latte art too, because that's what I want to do too when I steam and latte art. It's always on point, and that's the greatest thing about this machine. That is the biggest investment that I did for more content creation to be out there.
Well, one of these days I'll have to get together with you, and you'll have to show me how to make the latte art because mine looks like a mess every time I every time I try and make it.
Mine's a mess too because I'm starting to learn. I'm trying each every day. I'm doing like latte art of the day, trying to figure it out. Like I
Yeah,
got the texture of the steamed milk, and I got the actual perfect shot. It's just doing the motion, so I'm just learning that day
right.
by day. So I try to get better at it. Eventually, I'll get it. Once I get it, I'll definitely. So, what is the next step for you guys for the next couple years as your roasting business starts to grow? Are you trying to become more big commercial or just staying the way you are right now?
No, you know, it sounds like I know everybody. You know, I think when a lot of people when they start a business, growth is obviously the goal. I feel like I'm at a really good spot right now. I'm very present in the community. I have enough work to keep me very busy, but I don't want to expand to. I mean, I just recently retired from a career, and now I'm having fun with this. You know what I mean? I don't want to turn it into another stressful, basically trading headaches. I'm in a good spot. I like to stay kind of where I'm at.
So you pretty much this is like your retirement hobby type of thing, just relaxing, just enjoying what you do, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely it definitely grew a little bit more than a hobby, probably well before I was expecting it to. Like I say, I do, right now, busy season for us usually starts, April-ish and goes all the way through Christmas. And, January, February, March is iffy. Things are really ramping up already this year. I do anywhere from, 2 to 300 pounds a week, which for me is a lot. Like I say, it's an 8-pound roaster and I usually do 7-pound batches on it. So, but it's not unbearable. You know what I mean? Like it's enough to where I don't feel like I'm overwhelmed and I still enjoy it. I feel like when it stops becoming fun or when I have to hire 10 employees, then what's the point?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I would love to come and just learn the whole roasting thing, um, and come to your facility and just seeing what the process is like. Even though you don't have really a facility, yours is just a small, like, little area, right?
Well, I'm gonna let you know. See, you've been to Brutus, so you've already ridden in the Mercedes. Now, if you come see me, you're gonna get a ride in the Vita.
You know what? Something like that with the VW, the smaller version, that's what I want because he's got more of a high tech type of thing. I just want something where
I
I
think
can
he
do
has a
something at
Loring,
home.
right?
Yeah, it's just like this whole computerized thing, and it
Oh yeah.
tells you like he has like special roasting profiles saved in there
Mhm.
so he can get like the same results. Yeah, it's just crazy just seeing all that. I'm like, wow, I don't want that much. I just want just a 1 pound roaster. I could just do a pound, at a time and just
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, the only thing it's funny. Somebody once told me when I had my 1 kilogram roaster, and I was like, well, I wonder if I could start a business, and I said just that I want to almost identical to what you just said. I just want to have fun with it. I want to keep it just kind of a niche thing and just small and just put out some good coffee. And he said, that's a great plan, except you're going to find that it's hard to say no to people. And I didn't really fully understand what he meant. When we started actually selling things, it became abundantly clear when one of your commercial wholesalers puts in an order. They don't care if you're working full time. They don't care if you didn't get any sleep the night before. They put in an order. You know what I mean? You can't necessarily turn business away. Is my point. Just I'm sure that you'll find once you start into it that your business will grow. Coffee's one of those things. It's like beer. There's so many out there, but that's a wonderful thing. People are always saying, "Well, the market's oversaturated," but it's really not. I roast coffee, but I love going to other shops and trying what they have. Try and pick up on their roast and see if I can figure out what they did or how they got the cleanliness in a cup or what they do to really freeze in the fruit flavors or whatever the case may be. It's a lot of fun and there's plenty of room for more people.
Yeah, definitely. There's so many different like coffee shops that are opening,
Mhm.
especially up here in the Capital District. And then a lot of people are doing the mobile carts too lately. So they just book events and stuff like that and just go around and do events. And it's just funny because there's one group of girls, they just started their own mobile cart and they get their coffee from Chris's Coffee. I did a video on them. It blew up. Now a year later, they quit their 9 to 5 and now they're pursuing their dream for full time.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And I like seeing stuff like that. I like
Yeah.
seeing businesses grow and seeing that happening. When you go to the local coffee shops, like, Have you ever had like a bad cup of coffee?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you typically order when you go to try to see if their coffee is good or like how they're pulling their shots of espresso?
You know, I don't really go into it like that. So it's just kind of what I'm feeling, for at the time, I guess. So, for example, like we spent a week in North Carolina. And when we were down there, we hit a couple different shops. Sometimes we just get back from the beach and I'll be like, man, I could really go for a mocha right now. And a mocha is not a good way to test whether somebody made a good, batch of coffee or not because there's so much other stuff in it, but I like them. So I would order that. I'm a really big guy, double espresso guy. I love to just sit on a good espresso and sip it and enjoy it. Maybe have a scone or something to go with it. Once in a while, if it's first thing in the morning, I'll get either an Americano or a pour over or whatever they're offering because I appreciate a black cup of coffee in the morning. I guess I don't really go in, I don't know if critiquing is the right word, but comparing or anything like that. You know what I mean? I'm just looking for a cup of coffee.
Typically, when I go to a coffee shop, I try to get a double shot of espresso and see if they know how to pull a shot of espresso. If they dialed in, probably 90% of the time, it's not dialed in. A lot of the I guess the different flavors that they do in their lattes oversees the espresso taste. So you don't taste really the espresso, you taste more of like the sugary taste. So you don't know if that shot of espresso is sour or bitter or just perfect. So I try to get just a regular double shot of espresso and try it out to see if it's, you know, dialed in right. So I get that good taste of like espresso. 90% of the time, a lot of people just don't dial in properly.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I mean, even if you look at some of your name brand, well, Starbucks, right? They have the business start to finish, right? Now they have their own fields, their farms, all the way through the process. But what I notice when you go to a lot of Starbucks, they're not pulling shots. They put the cup under there and they push a button. Everything's automated, right? And to your point, more often than not, when I do get a double espresso, I'm disappointed. And I'm like, it's drinkable, but once in a while, I'll get that rare occasion where I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? So yeah, I don't know if it's a train issue or an equipment issue or, a care issue. I feel like a lot of places, nobody's ever going to care about the product like the owner. You know what I mean? So for somebody to run a perfect shot consistently, they got to care about what they're doing and take the time to learn how to do it properly.
Your go-to drink that you normally drink on the daily, like how would you drink your coffee? Pretty much just black in the morning?
Yep. I have, well, gosh, we probably have 5 Ninja coffee makers, and I have one that I use exclusively at home. I have a nice espresso machine. I have a Breville. That's awesome if I just want to pull a good shot or, if I want to treat and we'll make Americanos or whatever, on the weekends. But yeah, I just usually do a drip. If I have time and I really want to, if I have a really good coffee, like I say, I love a French press. To me, that's probably my favorite way to have a cup of coffee is a French press. I feel like that's the best way to actually taste what your coffee is, versus a pour over or anything else. But my daily is just a Ninja coffee pot. And you would think with 11 different origins that I'd have the opportunity to have, all this awesome coffee whenever I wanted. But we have a pretty high turnover as far as like roasting and getting it out the door. So a lot of times I end up with just whatever I have sitting around. So it's not as sexy as you might imagine.
Sometimes it's just better off just like you don't even buy store-bought coffee. You just use whatever you have left over from whatever you roast or whatever and
Oh
just
yeah.
have that.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't bought store-bought coffee in a long time. I mean, I always have, fresh coffee, but I'm spoiled. Like I'll walk out and see what I have available in the morning. So I do get to pick between origins and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun.
Which one's your favorite origin if you was to pick?
Oh gosh, we have a Peru right now that I absolutely love. It's super smooth and it's got a really nice sweet finish. Mexico Chiapas is always up there with one of my favorites. Royal Reserva I don't know if you've had that one or not. We had it last year. It's very fruit forward. It's just an awesome Honduras. I'm going to run through a whole bunch of them because I can't narrow it down to just like one origin. That's my favorite. Brazil Legender, whenever I have it in stock, always ends up being one of my favorites.
Yeah, the way you roast it, you're like, yep, I like it. You like how do you like normally roast? Like between medium or
It really
medium?
depends on the bean. So if I get a bean that I'm not familiar with or an origin that I'm not familiar with, I may have an idea on where I want to take it, but I'll do several different profile roasts to kind of see where it's going to shine. That's kind of how I ended up with my Honduras Dark, which is our absolute bestseller. When it was one of the first bags of coffee I ever got. And as a medium, it was just like plain Jane and really boring. So I took a little bit darker and it really pulled out a nice dark chocolate note and was just amazing. And it's been our go-to. That's the only bean that I have that's consistent. It's so versatile. It makes an awesome espresso. It stands up to milk drinks. It's an amazing shot. It's great in a drip. It's great in a pour over. As you mentioned, hard scrabble, awesome in a cold brew. It makes some of the best cold brew I've ever had. So it really, as far as where I take things to roast, I try and pick the origin and the bag of coffee with, idea that all right, this is going to be a light roast, or I'm hopeful it's going to be a light roast, or it's probably going to be a medium. But sometimes I'll just play with it a little bit and see, where it really shines.
That's awesome. No, it's good. It's educational, learning like the whole like what type of like roast you want to put in for like that specific origin, and understanding that, and then messing around with those messing around with it and see which one will be best for that specific origin when you're roasting. It must be like, is it like easy or hard for you to something like that, or you just have like just a general idea?
No, I think I'm fairly comfortable with it now. I've been roasting for about 5 years, so I'm fairly comfortable with you know getting what I want out of a bean. It's so roasting certainly isn't rocket science, but you gotta pay attention to it. It's all about your time, your heat, and your airflow, right? So if I have a fruity bean or like a delicate bean, like Ethiopia is a delicate bean, right? You if you over roast them even by a little bit, they're not going to be bad. They're still going to taste good. But if you have like a really nice fruity nuance to it, it's just going to be muted if you overdo it, right? So, with those, I'll hit them with a lot of heat initially, and that kind of almost like freezes in the fruitiness, and then I'll stretch out, I'll stretch it out just a little bit, and then after you mentioned first crack. After you hit first crack, you usually go, if I'm doing a light roast, I'll do like a minute and a half after first crack, for my development, and that's usually a really nice cup of coffee. And if you need something, if you're trying to pull out a little bit more sweetness, you just let it go a little bit longer, right? You get pretty comfortable with it, and you know, you just play with it until you figure out what's going to work for that particular bean.
It's like a science.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little
So,
bit.
but like I have a Guatemala right now, which is it's a fantastic cup of coffee. It's got some citrus notes to it. It's very sweet on the finish, but if you hit it with too much heat, it comes off with a little bit of a bitter note to it, which dissipates over time, but when I first tried it, I'm like, whoa, what is that? I'm going back through it. I'm like, what did I do wrong here? So then I tried hitting it with a little bit lower heat and I slowed it down a little bit, and it's fantastic. Yeah, a lot of it's trial and error. There is a little bit of science to it. Completely self-taught in all of this. Like I say, it's reading books, as you have done, watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I do a lot of research. If something doesn't seem right, or if I seem, if I want to know how to change it, Google's amazing. So,
Yeah, the internet's definitely amazing. You can get
right.
so much knowledge and educational stuff, especially from like those professionals out there doing those educational videos to get somebody started. What could you say for someone who's starting off roasting? What can you do to help them in their journey, or what did you learn that you think will be perfect for someone starting new into the roasting industry?
I would say, well, as far as roasting in general, the best thing that ever could have happened was learning to roast in a tiny little clay pot doing, 50 to 70 grams at a time, because I had to use all the senses, right? The sight, sound, smell, and really learn what the beans are doing. Feel like when you start off with if you were to just train and start off as a large commercial roaster, you learn how to push buttons. Learning the way I did, I feel like I really understand what the coffee's doing. Once you understand what the coffee's doing and when it's doing it and when it should be doing it, that really simplifies things for you, regardless of what machine you're roasting coffee on. So that's what I would say to start. You know what I mean? Try it out, play with it a little bit, and see if it's even something that you enjoy doing. And then start off with a popcorn roaster, or one of the ones that just go over your stove. And then if it interests you, then graduate up to a little bit larger roaster. And then once you dial it in, and because that's going to be a lot of fun. That's where your fun is. You have small batches. You're doing a pound at a time, and you're really tweaking your coffee beans, exactly how you want them. Once you scale up, getting those finite nuances can be a little bit more challenging, especially if you're trying to produce, a decent amount or larger batches, or your volume or whatever. But the basics still apply. So everything that we've done with this business, it's been organic. The growth has been organic and it's been gradual. So like even when I went from my 1 kilogram home roaster to my 8 pound roaster, I told myself I really want to feel the squeeze before I upgrade, right? Just to make sure that I'm still into this and I'm doing the right thing. And it finally got to a point where I'm out there, you know, till 10 o'clock every night just to get 20 pounds of beans. And I'm like, okay, I have to do something bigger. When I finally got a band sealer to seal the bags and I wasn't sealing each and every bag, by hand, little things like that. I waited until I felt a little bit of the pressure and then I upgraded. Does that make sense? So like I didn't just jump into, a $30,000 roaster, $2,000 a month rent facility, you know, all this other stuff, not really understanding or knowing about it.
So pretty much you start off small, get to know and understand the whole roasting aspect of it, play around with it a little bit, see if it's for you or not, and just work on it. And if you feel that you're comfortable to jump to the next step, gradually increase. Don't jump into it right away because you don't know what the outcome is going to be long term. So you're pretty much saying to start off small, practice, get to understand the whole process of it. And if you feel like you're comfortable and you're good to do what you need to do to make it as a business, jump right up to something big.
Yeah. And what I would also say is when you start out, share your product, right? So give it out to all your friends. That's what we did. I gave my wife at one point was like, oh, I wonder if we could start selling this. So we got some bags off Amazon and I took a bunch of coffee into work. And whether it was good or those were just my guys and they had my back and were incredibly supportive, that's what gave me that extra bump to, say, you know what? No, we can do this. Like this was in right when COVID started. We started this business when COVID started. Everything else was shut down. I'm like, we can do this. And it worked. I can't say enough about listen to your customers, especially with coffee, because you can read, there's so much stuff out there about, you need to do this a certain way, or you need to, only good coffee is, a light roast or this and that. Listen to your customer base. So if your customers are telling you they want something a little bit darker, or if they really appreciate a certain bean, pay attention to how you roasted that bean, right? Not everything has to be what someone who's an expert tells you how you have to roast it. Your customers will guide you, I would say, almost completely in how your business develops.
Yeah, definitely. Customers is the one way to help you grow, and especially in a starting business, because there's the ones that's going to be purchasing your stuff. Like the professionals out there are not purchasing your stuff. It's just the customers or the ones giving you the feedback and using that feedback to help you grow. That's definitely a good way to start. Do you have an actual website where people
I
can
do.
purchase? You do? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. chatandroasters.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, although I don't post as often as I probably should to be where I need to be on my social media. And even with the website, it's one of those things where I try and stay up on it, but there's been times where I'll go through an entire bag of coffee that I never put on my website. And it's just because it's just one of those things I burn through it at the market or whatever the case may be. But I try and stay up on it as best as I can.
Yeah, exactly. What market are you in?
Cooperstown Farmers Market.
So everybody, I need you to follow Chatty Wren. Purchase his coffee, his beans on the website. Definitely visit him at the Cooperstown Market. He's got really great coffee. It's phenomenal. And go see Emily from Hardscrabble because she definitely supplies it, and then all the other places where you can get it. I want to thank you for being part of the podcast, and thank you for sharing your story and how you got started, and then helping my listeners out there understand what it's like to become a roaster.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me. It's definitely been fun. And I'll tell you what, since you asked everybody to follow me, I think Facebook is at like 900 and something followers. Whoever that person is that is my 1,000th follower, we'll do a little thing that I will send them a free bag of coffee.
Okay. So the 1,000 follower gets a free bag of coffee from Chatty Wren.
That's it.
That's it. Well, thank you, Cooney, for being part of the show, and I appreciate you taking your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to our conversation with Cooney from Chatty Wren Coffee Roasters. We hope you enjoy and learn about the art and science of coffee roasting. Don't forget to check out their website and social media for more updates and special offers. Until next time, keep brewing and exploring rich flavors of coffee.